Hare 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 Krishna. I'm grateful to be here with all of you today. And there is a abundance of Jagannath, Baldev, Subhadra today at the temple. Multiple manifestations of their lordships. And outside we had beautiful exhibition of the devotional art that various of our children have assimilated and expressed. So after a beautiful Abhishek, I will speak today about Lord Jagannath, and I'll speak about him from 4 different perspectives with some pastimes or some analysis from each perspective. In general, whenever we look at something, say we look at people, we look from a particular perspective. So for example, we see someone, say, okay, this person is an Indian, this person is an Australian. We might look at them from the nationality perspective. We might say, okay, this person is a male, this person is a female, gender perspective. We can look from the perspective of age. Okay, this person is young, this person is middle-aged, this person is elderly. So like that, now each person can be looked at from different perspectives. And similarly, the Lord himself can be seen from different perspectives. And just as the same person seen from a different perspective is insightful. If we want to know someone, we may know somebody as, say, somebody is our devotee guide. They are like a counselor or a preacher. And then we know them in that particular role. But then we see them with their spiritual master. And then they are not the teacher, they are the student, they are the disciple. And that's a different role. And then we learn something more about that person. So, similarly, when you want to know more about the Lord, so today we had the Sanan Yatra where the Abhishek of the Lord was performed. So this Jagannath, Baladev and Subhadra. Generally, while all 3 deities are together, it's Jagannath who is considered the most prominent. And that's why the temple is called the Jagannath temple. It's called the Jagannath Rath Yatra. He is the Lord. Of course, Baladev is not different from him, and Subhadra is the sister, very close to them. So we will focus on Jagannath, and we'll also talk about Baladev and Subhadra along the way. And if we consider Jagannath, we will look at Lord Jagannath from 4 different perspectives, depending on how much time we have. First is, we'll look at him from the broad Vedic perspective. That what is the position of Lord Jagannath in the Vedic tradition where there are so many devatas? What is his origin story? We won't go into details, but we'll try to understand the significance. Then, after that, now we'll look at it from the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition perspective. We all are a part of the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition. I'll explain what that means shortly. Then we'll look at like Jagannath from the ISKCON, the Krishna conscious perspective. Within the Gaudiya tradition, we are a part of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. And then lastly, we will try to understand our own individual perspective. Each one of us has a personal relationship with the Lord. And how we can nourish, relish and cherish that relationship. That will be the concluding part. Okay. So now, there are many, within the broad Vedic tradition, there are many devatas. And there are many deities. And this has often been a source of bewilderment for people who are Westerners. People who are not followers of the Vedic tradition. He says, this one Western observer, he said, as far as religion is concerned, Hinduism is the only billionaire. Because there are so many gods. And there's a Hindu commentator who said, why do you have so many gods? He says, we believe in backups. Now, there are different ways of looking at this, and while neither of them is true, both of them are a superficial understanding. But the idea is that there is the Vedic understanding of divinity is actually very sophisticated. So, in the broad Western tradition, there are two approaches to divinity. One is, you can say, conceptions of divinity. Divinity is broadly God. Sorry. So, one is monotheism. Does anyone know, any of the kids know what is monotheism? Okay. Yes? Yes, theism is belief in God, thank you. And monotheism is belief in one God. Yes, atheism is no God. And the opposite of that is polytheism. So now what is polytheism? Can you guess? Yes, many gods. So now, in the Christian tradition and the Abrahamic tradition, Islamic tradition, there was the idea of one God. And in the tradition that came before that in the West, the Greco-Roman tradition, there were many gods. That was called polytheism. But in the Vedic tradition, when the Western people came to India, they saw there are so many temples and so many gods. They initially thought this is also polytheism. There are so many gods being worshipped. But then they noticed something peculiar. That while in the polytheistic tradition, this god was in charge of this, that god was in charge of that, that god was in charge of that. There were gods who were often competing with each other. But in the Vedic tradition, there were many gods and they were all considered supreme. Isn't it? If you go to Vishnu temple, Vishnu is supreme. If you go to Krishna temple, Krishna is supreme. If you go to Ram temple, Ram is supreme. If you go to Jagganath temple, Jagganath is supreme. So, what is this? This just didn't fit into their neat categories. So the Vedic understanding is much more sophisticated. And what is that sophistication? It is actually polymorphic monotheism. Does anyone know what is morphic or morphos? Do you study morphology? Morphology is change. Yeah, it's about shapes and structures. Isn't it? Forms, yes. So polymorphic monotheism means that there is one God, but he manifests in many forms. Advaitam, there's only one deity. Advaitam Achyutam Anadim Anantarupam. He has many, many forms. And this is distinctive. There is one God, but that does not restrict, because that one God manifests in different ways. And why does he manifest in different ways? Because he wants to reciprocate with the love of devotees in different ways. Yadyadhyat urugaya vibhavayanti tattadvapuh praniyase sadanugrahaya. That sadanugrahaya, for having mercy on the sad, on those who are devoted, the Lord manifests in yadyadhya to urugaya, yadyadhya, with whatever intelligence, with whatever conception. Urugaya vibhavayanti. That Lord who is glorified with beautiful songs, he is worshipped, he is adored. Tattad vapuh praniyase. The Lord, vapuh is form. So the Lord manifests in those forms. Tattad vapuh praniyase. So this is the merciful reciprocity of the Lord. And Jagannath is the manifestation, is a particularly astounding manifestation of this reciprocity. So reciprocity means that at one level, if we consider there is a devotee here and there's a Lord here, The Lord is not impersonal, but my drawing is impersonal. So, so this Krishna, this is ultimate Param Satya, Bhagavan, and this is the Jiva who is trying to worship. Now there are different souls who may worship the Lord in different ways. And when they approach the Lord, that same Lord reciprocates with one devotee in one way, with another devotee in another way. And in this reciprocation, when the worship reaches there, that reciprocation leads to multiple manifestations of the Lord. So, while at the material level, the manifestations of them, there may be avatars who come at particular times. But these are not just something who manifests in this world. The Lord exists eternally. And when Jagannath manifests, why does he manifest? Now, I won't go into the full story because that will take a lot of time. And many of you know the story. But from this analytical framework, what is happening is Jagannath manifests. There is a historical manifestation of Jagannath, and there is a historical manifestation of Jagannath the person, and there is a historical manifestation of Jagannath the deity. Now both are similar, at the same time both are different. So we know, generally we think of that the devotee and the Lord, they have a relationship, and the devotee is transformed by the worship of the Lord. And that is true. That's the whole idea of purification. So when there is a devotee, and then there is the Lord. So when the devotee worships the Lord, when there is a relationship, the devotee there is transformation. And this transformation is what we call as purification, Shuddhikaran. However, love, when it is real and complete, it works both ways. Now, when two people really care for each other, then in caring for each other, both become better. In caring for the other person, the first person becomes better. And in caring for the first person, the second person becomes better. So both get transformed. Now, in a philosophical sense, sound has become transformed now. Okay. Okay, it's gone back, okay. So, in a philosophical sense, the Lord is unchanging. He is beyond any change that characterizes this world. But the Lord changes because he wants to reciprocate with the love of his devotees. And here, what happens is, it is the same Krishna who has an extremely attractive form. He is so attractive that he is called as Madan Mohan. Kandarpa Koti Kamaniya Vishesha Shobham. That millions of cupids get attracted and stunned by his beauty. And yet that Krishna, when he is in Dwarka, he is longing for being with the Brajavasis, feeling separation from their love. And at that time, when there is the recitation of the pastimes of Vrindavan that happens in Dwarka, the Dwarkavasis want to know. The Dwarkavasis want to know what happens in Vrindavan. Why is Krishna so attracted to it? And then there's one associate who has been in Vrindavan and has also been in Dwarka. Who is that? Rohini, yes. And Rohini starts describing the pastimes. And they make sure that Krishna is not there because they know Krishna will be immensely affected when he hears about the devotees. But somehow, although Krishna has been sent away, Krishna somehow, he just gets the sniff, gets the hang of it, and just comes running back. And when the pastimes are being described, as Krishna remembers those pastimes, by hearing them. Now he's internally always remembering them. But when there is an external reinforcement of an inner perception or an inner recollection, there is greater impact. And Krishna becomes so immersed. Now sometimes, say when we are concentrating on something, and they say we are trying to hear a talk, and maybe the person next to us starts talking on their phone. We say, stop, don't talk. The door opens, we might get a little annoyed. Now, of course, if we are bored with the talk, we are annoyed that the door is not opening. We want some disturbance. But either way, the point is, when we want to be absorbed in something, we want to remove all distractions. So we may try to remove distractions by making external changes. That's why nowadays you can watch, if somebody wants to watch a movie, they can watch a movie at home on streaming services. But still people pay a big amount of money and go to movies. Why? Because they want immersion. They want absorption. Of course, that's absorption in illusion, which is not very helpful. But people want to be absorbed in it. Now, we made external changes. What is that? Okay, turn off the lights. No distraction. And we don't want in the theater people talking with each other. Silence. We want to watch the movie. Now, when the Lord wants to immerse himself by his omnipotence, it is not just that the external distractions go away, but actually even internal distractions go away. What that means is, when he's hearing, at that time there are physical transformations. Anything that can be a potential for distraction, that is withdrawn. Now, for example, maybe you're sitting on the floor and it's not very comfortable. Or maybe you're sitting on a chair and it's too comfortable. You're falling asleep because of that. Whichever way. Now, our physical limbs sometimes can be a source of discomfort. So what happens with Krishna is that he doesn't want any distraction. So the limbs, there are the Jnanendriyas are taking in. He's actually hearing, but while he's hearing, the information is coming in. At that time, the Karmendriyas will come in the way. The Karmendriyas are the action-performing senses. So that they don't come in the way, the Karmendriyas are withdrawn inside. And that's why Jagannath seems to be at one level incompletely formed deity. But he's not incompletely formed, he's transcendentally formed. He is transcendentally transformed. So the form of Jagannath reveals how the Lord himself, in order to remember the Lord, remember and relish the pastimes of his devotees or with his devotees, he just gets transformed. And that's how his eyes, they're so big. All his senses, they are transformed in such a way that the immersion becomes maximum. So, Jagannath manifests something extraordinary. I said, in the Vedic tradition, what does Jagannath manifest? Jagannath manifests, there are so many forms of the divine. But Jagannath is the only form of the divine that is transformed by the love of the devotee. That there is the form of Krishna, there is the form of Ram, there is the form of Narasimha. Narasimha, we could say, is the divine transformed, but that is not so much due to the love of a devotee. It is the love of devotee, but it is more the conditions required to kill the demon who is persecuting his devotee. But Jagannath, his speciality is, it is demonstrating that Jagannath's form specifically, it demonstrates how the Lord is transformed by the devotee's love. So that loving relationship between the Lord and the devotee is the supreme reality by the devotee's love. So in this Lord Jagannath is unique. And now, of course, we know in the story of Maharaj Indradyumna, the Lord arranged that he had Vishwakarma come and make the deities, but then he got transcendentally impatient. And that architect had said, You should not disturb me when I'm making the deities. And then he couldn't hear any sound. Now, why was it that the sound stopped coming? And why was it that he became so impatient? He said, devotee should be tolerant, devotee should be patient. But he became impatient. And he barged in. And then the result was that the deities seemed to be again incompletely formed. So the deity of Jagannath, it seems incompletely formed. But actually, that's a superficial perception. It is, the deity is transcendentally formed or transcendentally transformed. So he was aghast because the architect left and he was told that he thought, what have I done? Because of my impatience, I have ruined this whole manifestation of the Lord as the deity. And then a celestial voice appeared and spoke to him, saying that this is the eternal form of the Lord. So, again, the Lord here transformed a devotee's heart with impatience, so that what would be incomplete, what would normally seem incomplete, would become complete. So the Ishopanishad says, Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam, that the Lord is complete and everything comes from Him is also complete. Now, how was this incomplete form complete? This incompletely sculptured form was complete because it is a manifestation of a transcendental love. So this is a uniqueness of the form of Jagannath within the Vedic tradition. So I said I'll talk from 4 perspectives. Do you remember what was the second perspective? Yes, the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition. Now the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition is the tradition of Vaishnava Bhakti, of Bhakti to Lord Vishnu, which was started by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So it is sometimes called as Chaitanya Vaishnava or Bengali Vaishnava, but it is Gaudiya Vaishnava. Gauda refers to a particular geographical area, but Gauda also is a variant of the word good. Not the English G-O-O-D good, the Bengali G-U-D good. So that refers to jaggery. So the Bengali jaggery is considered especially sweet. If any of you have eaten that, it's just like chocolate, it melts in your mouth. So similarly, the understanding is that Vaishnavism manifested in various parts of the world and certainly various parts of India. There's Sri Vaishnavism, there's Madhva Vaishnavism, all these manifested. But a special sweetness, just like good is there all over India, but the good in Bengal is special. So like that, while love for the Lord was manifested everywhere, the Gaudiya Vaishnavism is special. A special sweetness is there. And that is sweetness is the sweetness of the love of Radharani for Krishna. And Krishna's love in response for Radharani. So now the Gaudiya tradition manifested in Bengal. Now while Bengal is close to Jagannath Puri, now Bengal had a wide, broad tradition of worship of various deities. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, from the time he appeared, it was clear that his heart longed for Vrindavan. And he was a devotee of Krishna. It's interesting that when he was a child, when the names of Krishna would be chanted, he would become pacified. Otherwise he would cry. But it's significant that Chaitanya Bhagavatadas, they don't mention so much the name of Jagannath being chanted. Now of course Krishna and Jagannath are not different, but the emphasis on the names of Krishna. And so there's constantly Krishna, Krishna, Krishna that is talked about in Mahaprabhu's pastimes. As a boy Nimai and then as Nimai Pandit. When he gives up his scholarship, that's because he's immersed in Krishna. He's a grammar teacher and he says, I just don't see any grammar. I just see everything as Krishna. And therefore he says, I can no longer teach you grammar. If you want to study grammar, please go to someone else. But I can teach you about how all the rules of grammar, all the purposes of language are ultimately fulfilled in Krishna. And then at Kanai Narshala, he has a mystical vision of Krishna. So it's all centered in Krishna, and then suddenly he decides to stay in Jagannath Puri. His whole life's aspiration, as soon as he takes sannyas, he wants to go to Vrindavan. He's always been calling out Krishna, Krishna. Then why does he go to Puri? Now there is an external circumstantial reason, but there is also an internal transcendental reason. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he could have gone to Vrindavan, but he went to Puri. So, and of course he visited Vrindavan, but he based himself in Puri. Now why? There's an external and there's an internal reason. Now the external reason is circumstantial. Shachi Mata told him that after you take sannyas, you're not going to come home. But if you go to Vrindavan, it's like going to another country only. It's so far away. It's so far away. Okay, I will never know what happens to you. But if you go to Puri, Puri is just like another house in the same home, or another room in the same house. He says that, there are people always keep going and coming, so I'll know about you. And Lord Chaitanya agrees. Now, generally speaking, it is quite difficult to get Lord Chaitanya to agree to anything once he has made up his mind. Like once he has made up his mind to take sannyas, nobody is able to stop him. And at one level, his whole purpose of sannyas was to go to Vrindavan. And how is Shachi Mata immediately able to stop him? So, yes, that reason is there, that it is her request, but there is something deeper going on. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is demonstrating primarily love in separation. He is Radha Bhavadyuti Suvalitam Naumi Krishna Swarupam. So in the transcendental loving relationships, Radha Pranaya, Krishna Pranaya Vikriti Rasmat. So we have Radha and we have Krishna. And this flavor of their love is love in separation. So now at one level, it is Radharani transforms into Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is actually in the mood of Radharani in separation from Krishna. Radha in separation from Krishna. That's the mood, for example, in the last verse of the Shikshashtakam, where it is said, Ashlishyava padaratam pinashtumam adarshanam marmahatam karotuva yatha tathava vidadhatu lampato mat prananathastu saeva naparaha. So you may make me broken hearted by trampling me under your foot or by just abandoning me and going away, and yet you are my Lord. So she is demonstrating love in separation. Radharani in a state of separation from Krishna is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Now, interestingly, Jagannath is Krishna in separation of Radharani. So, in that sense, that form is the perfect counterbalance for the form of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Krishna, when he is in Dwarka, he gets transformed so much. Why is he so transformed? Because he just cannot bear separation from Radharani. While the separation is there, separation is from all the Vrajavasis, but among all the Vrajavasis, the topmost Vrajavasi, the one dearest to the heart of Krishna is Radharani. And in longing to be with her, his whole body itself gets transformed. So there is Krishna in separation from Radharani as Jagannath, and there is Radharani in separation from Krishna, that is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And thus, there is the perfect foil. They are the perfect counterpair for each other. And that's why when the first meeting happens, in one sense, when there is separation, there is naturally a longing for union. We naturally want to be with someone from whom we are separated. And when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu comes for the first time, he just forgets everything and rushes toward the Sanctum Sanctorum, toward the altar of Jagannath to embrace Jagannath. And then emotions overwhelm him so much, he just faints. And then the Pandas and their assistants, they think, who is this person who's upstart? He's creating a disturbance over here. They're about to chastise him and almost throw him away. But then Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya recognizes, this person is showing signs of great ecstasy. So there can be deviation from the normal behavior. So there is normal behavior. Now normal behavior means, say, if the darshan in the temple and a person comes in a queue, one by one, and they take darshan and then they go away. Now there is below normal, that is abnormal behavior. If somebody starts coming to the temple and starts screaming, or somebody just starts punching someone, that's not what is expected in the temple, isn't it? That's abnormal behavior. Now this is a unhealthy, this is negative deviation from the normal. But there could be a positive deviation from the normal. And that is paranormal behavior. It is above the normal. It is paranormal, or we could say transnormal behavior. So somebody comes, a person who is alcoholic and drunk, that person somehow comes to a temple and they're so drunk that they come into the temple and just fall. That person falls unconscious. And some devotee is in so much ecstasy on seeing the Lord that person also falls unconscious. Now, both of them have fallen unconscious, but if we don't understand the difference, then we should fall unconscious. There is a universe of difference between the two. So, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's transcendental ecstasy is completely different from the normal, but it is way above the normal. So the guards think his behavior is abnormal and they want to chastise him. But Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he is an evolved person. He has not experienced those ecstasies, but he has heard about those ecstasies. And thus he understands that Mahaprabhu's behavior is transnormal. And therefore he says, hey, stop. Normally if some upstart comes, he'll just throw them out. He says, I'll take him to my home and he'll rest him comfortably. Let's wait for him to come back to consciousness. And then, now what happens is this first behavior, after that Mahaprabhu says that, actually, I don't want to disrupt the worship of Jagannath. And therefore afterwards, he stays outside the temple near the Garuda Stambha. And from there he takes darshan. Now again, the external reason is, he says, I don't want to be disturbed. Or I don't want to disturb everyone. I'll just go into ecstasy and faint. But the internal reason again is that this Leela arranges to maintain the mood of separation. That Mahaprabhu stays away from Jagannath. And it's significant that many people, when the Lord Jagannath's Rath Yatra comes out, people often at night, if the Rath Yatra is not completed or even it's halfway, then people at night go up on the cart and they try to embrace Jagannath. But there is no description of Mahaprabhu actually embracing Jagannath. Mahaprabhu dances in front of Jagannath, and when Jagannath's cart does not move, he touches with the head and gets it to move. So the whole Rath Yatra is centered in one sense on Jagannath and another sense on Mahaprabhu and their love. But that love is also in one sense from distance or separation. So within the Gaudiya tradition, Jagannath is the perfect counterpart for Mahaprabhu. Both of them share the same mood of love and separation. And thus this deity is extremely significant. The Goswamis talk about how these three places, Vrindavan, Navadvip and Puri, all these three are extremely important for the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition. Now that brings us to, what is the third part? ISKCON. Now within the ISKCON perspective, I'll talk about two things. I'll talk from Prabhupada's personal perspective And then Prabhupada's, because the whole Krishna consciousness movement, in one sense, is the body of Srila Prabhupada. It's the Vishwaroop of Srila Prabhupada, which he has manifested. So, from his socio-cultural perspective. So, from his personal perspective, Prabhupada seemed to have great attraction for Jagannath right from his childhood. And that's why, as a small child, he organized and performed the Rath Yatra ceremony. When I was looking at the children's beautiful artistic collection, I was thinking that now when we have to do something, there are so many supports available, and what was done is laudable. But at maybe 70, 80 years ago, it was not 70, 80, probably 100 years ago almost. Something like that. More than 100 years ago. Prabhupada was born in 1896. So he performed the Rath Yatra in 1905, around that time, 10, 15 years old. So almost 110 years ago. At that time, getting paraphernalia and everything was not easy. And Prabhupada organized. He was Abhay at that time. He organized. Now, of course, his parents and others have helped. But even for them to go through all that labor, because his desire must have been so strong. Now, I asked one of my friends who is a Bengali historian, was it a common practice at that time that for kids to organize Rath Yatras? And he said no. Rath Yatra itself was a common festival. But kids organizing it was not ordinary. So, Prabhupada had a personal relationship with Jagannath. And even as a small child, and then it's described that when he graduated, when he more or less, not graduated, he finished his 12th or something, 10th or 12th, he had a vacation. And normally when there are vacations, people want to go to scenic hill stations or Disneyland or some picnic spots. But Prabhupada, I was thinking, okay, what are the timings for the train to go to Jagannath Puri? And how much will it cost? Prabhupada was dreaming about going to Puri. He was dreaming about going to Vrindavan. He was there, this longing for Jagannath. And then, so that was his personal perspective. That when Krishna reciprocated with him. See, bhakti is all about reciprocation. A devotee has a particular desire and the Lord reciprocates. So what is the reciprocation? And Prabhupada was in America, Jagannath suddenly appeared. And it was the devotees who came to Srila Prabhupada initially, they knew nothing about what to speak of the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition, even the Vedic tradition they didn't know. When they wanted to decorate the 26th Avenue storefront for Prabhupada's pleasure, I just went to they had an alternative art gallery, and they found some pictures which look Indian. And they brought them. And in one of the pictures, he says, Prabhupada, this is beautiful. And he says, Prabhupada, what is that? Is that a cat? I said, it was actually Hanuman. Now, how does one mistake Hanuman to be a cat? They just couldn't figure out what is this. So, they just went to one of the devotees had just gone to a store, and there, Malti Mataji, she saw something which looks like something Indian. And they didn't have money, so just picked it up and brought it. and she says, Swamiji, at that time they would call Prabhupada Swami, Swamiji, I got something. And she just showed it. And to her amazement, Prabhupada was sitting, Prabhupada just got up and offered obeisances. She said, what is this? This is the Lord of the universe, this is Krishna. She said, look at it. This doesn't look like Krishna at all. Prabhupada says, this is Jagannath. He says, Jagannath has appeared himself and we should worship him. And then, that's how not only Jagannath worship started, but the Jagannath Rath Yatra started. And it became one of the most, not just eye-catching, you can say eye-popping festivals. It's amazing. Now, the hippies love to do something strange. Now, if they wanted to dance on the streets, that was a strange thing. If normally if they would have danced on the street, the police would have come and arrested them. But now in Jagannath Rath Yatra, they danced on the streets and the police escorted them. So, it was all far out. So, it was Prabhupada's personal devotion being reciprocated by the Lord. And now, all over the world, we have Jagganath Yatra being celebrated. From Boston to Berlin to Brisbane, from Durban to Dubai to Dublin. Everywhere in the world, Jagganath Yatra is being celebrated. So this is the reciprocation of the Lord with the longing of the devotee. But this becomes even more significant if we consider the socio-cultural perspective. When the British came to India, the British came from a Christian background. Not all of them were devout Christians, but that was the background. And the Christian background is iconoclastic. Iconoclastic means that their idea is that God can never manifest in any form. In fact, worship of any form is actually the worship of the Satan. They say that when you worship any form in this world, even if they believe God has a form, but they don't think that any form in this world can manifest God. Therefore, they say if you are worshipping any form, then you are worshipping something other than God. And the something other than God becomes a competitor to God. And when it becomes a competitor to God, then that competitor needs to be destroyed so that the one true God's worship can be established. So now, among the various manifestations of the divine that were seen in India, they all found, Ram looks beautiful, Krishna also looks beautiful. But the one form they just couldn't digest was the form of Jagannath. One Western Indologist, he came and he said, says, if Hinduism is the religion of the Satan, then Jagannath is the ultimate voodoo lord. They just couldn't comprehend it. And there was one Christian missionary who said that the success of Christianity would be to end this worship of this horrendous looking Lord. And then what happened? Now Prabhupada was educated in the Scottish Church College, which is a Christian college. And he knew about these conceptions. That's what his professor would speak at times in school. Now, just look at the audacity of Srila Prabhupada. Now, Prabhupada, that same Lord, that particular form whose worship they wanted to stop. Prabhupada not only started that, Prabhupada made that public. In the sense that that's not just worship in the temple, that worship will be done on the streets. And when there was the Jagannath Rath Yatra in London, it happened many times, but Prabhupada couldn't be present on many occasions. At one time, Prabhupada was quite sick. And still he said, okay, I'll just come and have darshan of Jagannath and I'll leave. But on the streets of London, when Prabhupada saw Jagannath being worshipped, Prabhupada just manifested such extraordinary energy. Prabhupada started dancing in public and all the people around just went mad. And the police at that time, they were trying to keep the crowd in control. And some of the devotees who were there in that Rath Yatra, I was in London for a month last year, I was talking with them. They said that what is described about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that when he would be performing kirtan, he would be in ecstasy and he would touch someone, that person would also go into ecstasy. So there were the cops who were supposed to guard, and the cops would tell the devotees, stop, stop. And they touch the devotees and somehow the cops would also start singing. So it was just extraordinary what happened. So for Prabhupada, this was actually the ultimate cultural conquest. It was from that socio-cultural perspective what Prabhupada achieved. So there are many spiritual teachers from India who have gone in the West and they taught Indian spirituality. But in general, they kept the parts of Indian spirituality which Western people would find difficult to understand, they downplayed them. Most of them talked about Advaita Vedanta. Because Advaita Vedanta does not involve any form. And it's relatively easy to accept. But Prabhupada not only emphasized the personal form of the Lord, but that form which was, in one sense, the Western mind, especially the Christian mind, would recoil the most. And that Jagannath attracted hundreds and thousands of people. So the chariot festival is now one of the most prominent cultural festivals which reflect the Indian tradition. And of course, Diwali is a big festival. Holi, the festival of colors, is big. But these are festivals that happen at particular places. The Jagannath Rath Yatra festival is something which happens on the streets. And it is somewhere which hundreds and thousands of people get the mercy of the Lord through this festival. So that is Prabhupada's reciprocation with Jagannath. And we in the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, as followers of Srila Prabhupada, have the opportunity to continue that reciprocation when we assist in organizing the Rath Yatra. And that brings me to the last part. What is the last part? The individual perspective. Now the Lord is eminently personal. When he has thousands and thousands and thousands of cows, millions of cows, and yet Krishna knows the names of every single cow. And if one cow goes away, Krishna calls her specifically by her name and gets her to come back. So like that, Krishna knows each one of us. There may be millions and billions and quadrillions and zillions, whatever word might be there. There might be souls in this world and the spiritual world. But Krishna knows everyone individually. Krishna has a personal and unique relationship with every soul. And he reciprocates with each soul by manifesting his attractiveness in an individual and distinctive way. So when we hear the pastimes of Jagannath, when we hear about his activities, now for some people, some aspect of Jagannath may be very attractive. In Rath Yatra, Rath Yatra itself is a festival, but within that there are many festivals. There is variety even within spirituality. So the festivals begin long before the main festival. The Sanan Yatra is a festival that comes long before the main festival. The main festival is going to be the Rath Yatra. And there are devotees who may be attracted to a particular festival. Rath Yatra goes one way, and then there's the Ulta Rath that comes back. Mostly we are not able to do the Ulta Rath, but that's also another festival. And the Lord as Jagannath, he comes out of Jagannath temple, stays in Gundicha. There is the Gundicha Margin, the cleaning of the temple is there before that. So there are many, many different aspects of the Lord and his pastimes. So each of us, we need to find out which aspect of the Lord attracts our heart. This Rupa Goswami, in his second version of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the Nectar of Devotion, is what Prabhupada called the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu in his translation. So the advanced version of NOD, the next book, is Ujjwal Neelamani. And there he elaborates on this term called Uddipan. Uddipan is spiritual stimulus. Just like the people have sensory stimuli. Like for an alcoholic, as soon as they see a bottle, then Sarva Dharman Parityaj. I just forget everything. I just have to drink. So that's a trigger. Now that is a trigger that a person needs to stay away from. Because sensory stimuli, they are such that now another person who is not an alcoholic may not be so agitated by that. So just as the sensory stimuli for each person are different. So now the sensory stimuli we need to keep away from, so that we don't get deluded. But just as sensory stimuli are individual, similarly there are spiritual stimuli that are individual. Each one of us may find a particular manifestation of the Lord attractive. So we may find, for example, that one particular song or even one particular line in one song, we may like that. And it's good to memorize the entire song, but we could just recite one line. Jai Gaura, Sei Krishna, Sei Jagannath. Jagannatha Swami, Nayana Patagami, Bhavatume. One line of one song can be our spiritual stimuli, can be our Uddipan. So when we recite that, when we remember that, our thoughts start rushing towards the Lord. Our thoughts become immersed in the Lord. So these spiritual stimuli, keep them close. Not keep them far away, but keep them as close as possible. Always. So when we do this, then it will be easier and easier for us to remember Krishna. So when we individually take responsibility to find out which aspect of the Lord attracts us, which particular festival, which particular deity dressing, which particular kirtan, which particular song, then we are taking responsibility for our spiritual growth. And then that particular stimuli will be something that nourishes us. When we are exposed to that stimuli, we will feel strength coming in our life. We will feel nourished, just like when we eat food, we feel nourished. Not only will it nourish us, but we will also relish it. Relish means, nourishment is okay. When we eat some good food, I feel content. But relish is beyond contentment. It is excitement. It is ecstasy. We'll relish this stimuli. Bodhayantaha parasparam kathayantascha mam nityam tushyanti. Tushyanti is when we are nourishing it. But tushyanti cha ramanti cha. Ramanti is where we are relishing it. So the Uddipan is what nourishes us, and Uddipan is what we also relish. And the key is that we need to cherish that Uddipan. Cherish means treasure it. Just like if we have some fond memories, we keep them carefully on our phone, we upload them on some drive, we may take printouts and keep them in an album. So those are our fond memories. So for each one of us, we have some spiritual stimuli, some Uddipan. When we cherish them, that's when we will find that we have strength always. We have joy always. Or at least we have access to strength and joy. And that's how our bhakti can become stabler. Life will always be filled with ups and downs. And those will challenge our faith, those will challenge our devotional commitments. But if we have our individual stimuli, our Uddipan, then those Uddipan can keep us strong and steady in our bhakti. And that is what we can pray to Jagannath. When you say, Jagannatha Swami, Nayana Pathagami Bhavattume. The song at one level seems strange, because we are singing that song in front of Jagannath. Isn't it? Jagannath Swami, please manifest before me. He's already manifesting before us. Then why are we saying it? But the song is something more specific. Jagannatha Swami, Nayana Pathagami Bhavattume. As manifest not just in front of my eyes, but manifest on the path of my eyes. What that means is, our eyes often go on the path toward the sense objects. Our eyes just are wandering. Indriyanam icharatam. Like that. But whenever our senses get distracted, our eyes are the primary senses that put us into illusion. So, on the path on which the eyes go, there will be sense objects. But instead, may the Lord manifest over there. So that prayer is not just, it is sung in front of the Lord when He is manifest. But what the prayer is for is that the Lord manifests constantly in the path of our eyes. That in one sense means that we find our Uddipan, our spiritual stimuli, and make them accessible. Make sure that we have them with us so that they can manifest in front of our eyes and within our minds and hearts. And thereby, we can be immersed in the remembrance of the Lord. We can never be immersed to the degree that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was, but we can be immersed following in His footsteps. And even if we can get a drop of His immersion, we'll find that there is extraordinary joy and ecstasy waiting for us in our personal relationship with Krishna. So I'll summarize. I talked about Lord Jagannath from 4 broad perspectives. What is the first perspective? The Vedic perspective. So the Vedic perspective has the idea of there is not monotheism, not polytheism, but polymorphic monotheism. One Lord manifesting in many forms. And among these many forms, Jagannath is unique in the sense that it is the Lord transformed by the devotee's love. Normally, the devotee is transformed by the Lord's love. The Lord is transformed means specifically the Lord's form is transformed by the love of the devotee. In that the form is unique. Then, what is the second perspective? The Gaudiya Vaishnava perspective. Within that, we discussed about how this form of Jagannath is the perfect complement to Lord Chaitanya. Because Jagannath is Krishna in separation, in Viraha Bhav. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is what? Radharani in separation from Krishna. And thus, while the external reason is that Shachi Mata wanted him to go to Puri, the internal reason is that that was the Lord. He was longing for Krishna, but that Krishna in that same mood. When we are longing for someone, and now, say if we love someone, that person is far away from us. We are longing for that person, but that person can't be with us for whatever reason. Then what gives us solace is to know that that person is also longing for us. If that person has forgotten us, then that makes us disturbed, not enraged. But so Radharani is separated from Krishna, but when she sees how Krishna is also longing for her and is separated, feeling separation from her, that solaces her heart. So that is the solace. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu doesn't enter to Jagannath temple, the external reason is that there was abnormal behavior, but it was transnormal behavior. And he kept a distance from Jagannath just to maintain that mood of love and separation. And third was the ISKCON perspective. So we talked about Srila Prabhupada's personal perspective. What was that? As a child, he performed Rath Yatra. And as a spiritual teacher in his old age, he replicated the childhood Rath Yatra on the streets all over the world. And Jagannath appeared miraculously to reciprocate with Prabhupada's love. And the second was the socio-cultural perspective. Among the various gods that the Christians consider the heathens worship, they consider the most unbearable for them was the worship of Jagannath. They wanted to end that worship, and that Lord not only appeared in their kingdom in the Western world, but appeared in the streets. And that was the cultural conquest that Srila Prabhupada heralded. And the last part is the individual. So each one of us has a personal relationship with Krishna. Krishna knows each one of us and cares for each one of us. And he reveals his beauty to us through spiritual stimuli, through Deepan. So when some particular song, when particular deity darshan, when particular pastime, particular aspect of the Lord attracts us, then that is the spiritual stimulus, the Uddipan that will nourish us, that we can relish, and therefore that is what we must cherish it. We keep it close to us, and that's how we can stay steady and strong in our practice of bhakti, even amidst life's ups and downs. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. We have time for only one or two questions if anybody wants to ask.
We know Arjuna was a devotee of the Lord. And what was his actual position as a connection with the Lord? That Lord married his sister to Arjuna and eternal pastimes.
Okay. So what was the connection of Arjuna with the Lord that he married his sister? Well, it's very important to recognize that we cannot mix the transcendental and the historical. See, from the transcendental perspective, the Lord is the parent of everyone. Pitahamasi Jagato. But then within the historical, within the Leela, there's Tattva and there's Leela. So within the Leela, the Lord has a father. Nanda Maharaj and Yashoda Maia's parents. So once we start going into the domain of relationships, if we mix the philosophical principles and the historical connections, then things can get quite confusing. So So for example, Krishna says, Mama Maya Duratteya. Maya is his energy. Okay. That's a Uddipan for you. Okay. So now, okay, but then we have the goddess Durga. She is the consort of Lord Shiva. Now we could trace, okay, then is is Maya Krishna's energy or is she Shiva's energy? Well, you can say she's both. Well, yes and no. So in general, we don't mix the two of them. So within the particular historical context of the past time, Krishna wanted to strengthen the Pandavas. So he knew that the Kauravas already had Bhishma. Although Bhishma loved the Pandavas, he was vow-bound to be on the side of the Kauravas. So he wanted to make sure that the Pandavas were also strengthened. And Duryodhan had that scheme that he wanted to marry Draupadi, so that, or he wanted one of their side, somebody from their side to marry, so that the Yadus will be bound in alliance to them. So Krishna wanted to make sure that the alliance that would be formed would be with the Pandavas side. So he was protecting. And in those times, so when the Lord appears, his pastimes are transcendental, but at the same time, they work largely within the norms of the historical society that they are in. So Mahaprabhu is giving eternal message, but when Mahaprabhu appears in Bengal, he speaks primarily Bengali. He speaks Sanskrit also, but primarily Bengali. So like that, marriages were often political alliances also. And of course, Subhadra and Arjuna were attracted to each other anyway. So it was not just a political alliance. It was the match of the hearts and it was also the need of the strategy. So that was, in that sense, circumstantial. I don't think that particular flavor of that relationship reflects between the relationship between the Arjuna and Krishna, or for that matter, or Subhadra and Krishna. We should mix the historical and the transcendental. Okay, thank you.
Prabhuji, a question from me. I come from Jagganath Dham, Orissa. I'm curious, although you touched the subject, I'm just curious to know why did Lord Jagannath did not have a big eye and without arm, and what caused this to transform him and exhibit this kind of form? What significance does it have for us?
Unless I've got amnesia, I think I spoke that. So I did speak that. I spoke about how the senses, when something is distracting us, we remove external obstacles so that we don't get distracted. But the Lord is omnipotent, so the Lord removes even sensory distractions. So his very karmendriyas could be a distraction, and through the jnanendriyas he's remembering the Lord's pastimes, Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan. Maybe you can hear the recording of the first part of the class. Okay. So that's why he appears. Any last question before we stop? Oh, okay, 2. Okay.
I just wanted to ask, you were speaking about transforming. I just wanted to ask, you were speaking about transforming our hearts when we are in a relationship with a particular deity. So if someone is going through mental health, I know that you speak a lot about all those topics as well. Someone is going through a lot of mental health disorders. How does love for a particular deity helps them transform them and heal them through that?
If a person who is mentally disturbed can connect with the Lord even through one manifestation. See, generally when we are sick and are in pain, we need first a pain medication, and then we need a curative medication. So at one level, if somebody can find relief in the Lord, when people are troubled, everybody has coping strategies. And some coping strategies can actually be unhealthy. Some people just start binge eating, some people start watching TV, some people drink. Now, for some people, the Lord can be their coping strategy. If they find that there is a particular manifestation of the Lord they're attracted to. They just like kirtan, they just like a particular song. They like a particular Lord. Now, that is certainly as a coping strategy healthier than certain like intoxication or other things. At the same time, we don't want to use the Lord to run away from the world and its problems. So yes, for a person, it's helpful if they have some uddipan towards the Lord, and that will give them some pain medication also, some relief immediately. But eventually, with the association of expert devotees, they need to understand what is their role in the Lord's service. We all say we are parts of Krishna. That is a philosophical truth. Mamaivaamsho jiva loki. But practically what it means is that we all have parts in Krishna's plan. If we are parts of Krishna, that means we have parts in Krishna's plan. And the way to overcoming any kind of mental health problem. See, mental health problems can have many causes specifically, but essentially the mind is a meaning-making machine. It needs to make sense of things. And we humans need meaning for having existence. We need food, of course, for living. But how does my life count? How does my existence count? So we need meaning in our life. And basically, when a person starts having mental health problems, their meaning-making machine is malfunctioning. They may have found meaning in a particular relationship. And so that relationship breaks. And then they feel, my life is meaningless. They may have found meaning in a particular career. And maybe the economy changes, maybe they get some physical injury, and they can't function in that career. And their meaning is lost. So, now we may have various sources of meaning in our life, in an external sense, and they may get disrupted at times. But there is a source of meaning that is indestructible. That is in our service to the Lord. But that doesn't mean just chanting Hare Krishna and worshipping the Lord. That also means finding out how we are meant to serve in our particular place and position in the world. So, with the association of expert devotees, if a person is helped in that, then their relationship with Krishna can also act as a curative medicine for them. So, both as a pain medication and as a curative medication. The cure to mental health problems is to be able to find a meaningful purpose for one's life. And that's what, okay, I'm depressed, I'm worried, I am struck by whatever it is. Generally, there are stress, anxiety, and depression. SAD, that's how people are sad. There are 3 mental health problems primarily in the world. But any of these, if you can find a meaning that is sufficient enough to make life's problems bearable.
So do you mean like finding your role in your relationship with Krishna?
Exactly. To the extent they can find that, then they'll be able to, bhakti can help them heal. Now that also may require developing particular skills, understanding certain things. So some practical areas are there. So Arjuna found his role in Krishna, in service to Krishna. But yes, Arjuna understood Bhagavad-Gita, but he also practiced as an archer throughout his life. So the spiritual and the material complement over here. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, last question quickly.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, I had a question when you said Lord Krishna knows all of his cows' names in the spiritual world. So do all of us also have like a particular name in the spiritual world that like is our actual name or is it not?
Oh no, we are utterly nameless. Of course not. Yes, each one of us has a particular Swarupa. Swarupa, right now we have a form. But that is the form of our body right now. Of course, our body is also used in Krishna's service, so the bodily form is important. But we all have a Swarupa in the spiritual world. Our own eternal form. And each form has a name. So every one of us has our particular name, our particular qualities, and our particular activities in relationship with Krishna. Okay. So thank you very much. Sri Jagganath Swami ki, Snan Yatra Maha Mahotsav ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki.